So I'm so glad that we have our guest on the line. She's been on the show many times before. Tanaath, how are you doing? That's it. I don't know what to do. It's been like this for the last couple of weeks, and I don't know if I should blame ISON for it or the electromagnetic interference that we're having or what, but there's been some very, very strange things going on all around with the servers, with the internet connections, with electronics. Clyde Lewis did a fantastic show detailing some of this, so I am going to try to work this out really quick while we keep the broadcast going. So bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, just for a moment. And it's amazing. It really is. So, all right, let's take a look at this here. Okay, Tanaath, can you try again, please?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Oh boy, yeah, I heard an ear-splitting screech.
I know.
And then apparently you could not hear me anymore.
Right, exactly. I don't know what's been going on, but I know that a lot of people have reported electromagnetic interference. Clyde Lewis has been on top of it and received many, many calls about very strange things going on with satellite connections, internet connections. He played something that the caller actually put the phone up to the television and was hearing all this weird interference from her television. And this all comes at the dawn of Comet ISON as it's approaching. And I don't know, do you have any thoughts on Comet ISON?
Well, ISON's not close enough to start doing anything like that.
Okay.
But, we are seeing an intensification in activity against, truth workers and other people who are doing this kind of work, including, all kinds of fun and games, interference. I've had friends who have been detained against their will, including Thomas Williams, the host of our regular Wednesday show, which is now being on hold until we can figure out what we're going to do with the format. We're actually thinking of pre-recording it and then releasing it at a later date to cut down on some of the fun and games that we've been experiencing with our show. So, there's a lot going on right now. In the more esoteric sense, we're seeing a real frenzy of attacks on people, specifically anybody who is an energy worker and involved in this work. Some of these attacks are flat out designed to kill, and others are just mild nuisances for some people. But it's intense right now. It's kind of like the last frenzy of violence and hatred before it all falls down. At least that's what I'm hoping.
It has been crazy for sure. Let me ask you this. What do you make of the fireballs in the sky that people have seen and been reporting over the last couple of weeks? There was a lot of them over the Indiana, Ohio areas, also more in Texas. And what's even stranger is that FEMA has ordered 14 million units of food to be delivered to FEMA Region 3, along with several other weird anomalies that are going on with Region 3. So, I don't know. All this just looks like it's all coming together or it's all connected, but maybe it's not. What are your thoughts?
Keep in mind, first on FEMA, keep in mind FEMA's run by the cabal, and that they do definitely make strategic use of leaks of their own information to inspire fear. So if you hear that FEMA is moving, 13 million food rations and scheduling emergency this or that in this or that region, well, it could just be a, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain, just watch what the puppet's doing sort of thing. A distraction, or an attempt to get people to generate something through their own fear. I don't play that game. I ain't going to fall for it. As for the fireballs, one thing that people should do is immediately check and make sure that there's no meteor showers in the area. There's, hundreds of meteor showers that happen in a year. You hear about the famous ones like the Perseids and the Leonids, but there are quite a few meteor showers that go around. Before you identify as an unidentified, rule out normal causes, right? Rule out the mundane. Don't go for swamp gas on Venus, because I don't think that's an actual solution or an actual explanation. But definitely, make sure it's not.
And there we go. Fantastic. We may just have to turn around and pre-record the show and see if we can cut out some of these bugs, but that is beautiful. We have AG on the line with us, so let's go to AG. And it's been a while since we've talked to him, and hopefully we can get Tanaath back on the show. But AG, are you with us?
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, very good. There's a little problem with Tanaath's connection, so we'll try to reconnect with her. But any thoughts on any of the topics that we've been discussing thus far?
I think that in reference to the FEMA movements, you got to kind of look at the track history really since 2007, when we've seen the information leaking, as Tanaath had shared, that the velocity of information leaking has really has been a constant thing, and really no event has happened. We've heard all these movements with the New Madrid fault and all these different events that they were supposedly planning for, and nothing has transpired besides just manifesting some fear within light workers and things for people to blog about or talk about on Facebook. So I kind of take the same position that Tanaath has, that is just more cabal propaganda.
It could very well be, and I've thought about this as well. Did you hear what happened in Puerto Rico recently? And it's not being covered by the mainstream media. Apparently, a large portion of Puerto Rico is having dreams and reoccurring dreams of fireballs falling onto Puerto Rico. And there was actually an insider on Clyde Lewis's show recently that came out and was talking about all the military activity that was going on down there, how these prophetic dreams, for lack of a better term, have been suppressed, and that there is an actual government agenda to suppress anybody that comes out and talks about this on Twitter, Facebook, or other places like that.
Interesting. It sounds like they have to do a lot of clearing.
Yeah. I'm very sorry.
Oh, no, it's no problem at all, Tanaath. It's just, it's very strange.
Actually, that one was me. I have a wireless headset, and I was plugging it back in to give it some electricity, and apparently there was enough static electricity coming from me to crash my system.
Ah, okay.
So I apologize for that one. I'm now using my cell phone.
No problem. We have AG on the line with us, and AG, anywhere you'd like to take the broadcast with Tanaath?
It's up to you. But first I want to talk a little bit, you guys were talking about fireballs in the sky, and I was saying first you want to eliminate the terrestrial sources and the common, mundane extraterrestrial sources like, meteor showers. If you've reasonably eliminated those, then chances are there has been a lot of testing going on of various methods to actually show up in our skies. Last Saturday, as I was driving home from a friend's house, we had a sighting, my mother and I both, of a light that was not a star and not a plane, lingering in the western sky for about an hour and a half, putzing about slowly. Definitely not any kind of satellite either. It was way too bright and not moving like a satellite either. We've seen stuff. There's been a lot of sightings going on, and I happen to know for a fact that what I saw was a friendly and piloted by somebody I actually know. So that was kind of fun.
I have noticed as well helicopters hovering around. For about a week, there was one that was coming around the vicinity of my home. And, I don't think they were watching me or anything like that, but every night for about 45 minutes, it would just fly in circles around the area that I live. So
a lot of people that do this work that I'm directly working with have reported to me various kinds of flybys and harassment, but from small planes, mostly unmarked small single-engine aircraft, and unmarked helicopters.
I know, it is very strange, but why do you think that is? Do you think it's because there's an agenda to watch people like us, or is it just because we're more aware, and therefore we're always looking at the sky and noticing things that a lot of people don't notice?
Well, no, a lot of this seems to be quite deliberate. I think it might be a harassment technique or tactic in some cases. In other cases, I think maybe it is because we're just looking at the sky more. You know, if you look at the sky more, you're going to see more stuff statistically than somebody who never looks at the sky.
Very true, very true. AG, why don't you take us away?
No, I agree. I think one of the things that we do, as, you know, people who are aware and people who are, you know, paying attention to our surroundings, is we tend to sometimes perceive things in a different context than what they really are. But sure, I've seen the single engine helicopters, and I'm sure there's, you know, other instances where things have happened that I haven't been aware. But you know, I kind of shift back to the big picture, and I'm sure Tanaath can share her insights on this as well. But the bigger picture is the ones who are still in power of Terra, of the planet, ultimately have much bigger fish to fry than us. The big challenge I see right now is that when the Empire was denied their Syria, and they were, you know, we can get into who and what denied them the ability to invade, like, you know, they've done in Iraq, and you know, every country since we've been born and before, is, you know, it was a strategic loss, and the loss was not so much the fact that the powers that be lost, you know, they wanted the central bank, and who knows what else was in that country or is in that country, but what it did was it awakened a lot of people who were sleeping. And you saw it in social media, you saw it with people you talked to at work, you saw people who really weren't paying attention, that were saying, wait a second, if Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11, then why are we working with Al-Qaeda in Syria? And it was a huge blunder. And what that did is that, you know, it backfired to a point where, you know, you had all these people that were asleep that are now awakening. And now you have the, you know, we can talk about it later, we have the impasse which is going on in the United States with the corporation, with DC. And it's, more of these distractions, more of these events, whether they're creating these events or whether there's actually something behind the scene that's driving the event, it's awakening a lot of people. And I think their biggest concern right now is it's building to a point where you're just not going to be able to slow it down. And, you know, with all the help we're getting to prevent really massive, even the DC attack, you know, 2 days ago, I've had people that are sound asleep, that breathe and sleep the Matrix, that are basically saying that this shooting smells like rotten fish. So
yeah,
the more they do, I'd say the more they do, keep doing it, because you're just continuing to awaken people.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's reached a point where it's becoming more and more blatantly obvious, even to people who've been fast asleep, that something's rotten in the state of this world. And that, you know, it's not your normal everyday corruption.
Oh, they've taken over completely, or they're attempting to anyways, and the agenda has moved so quickly that you're absolutely right, AG. People are waking up, and it is a blessing in disguise. I mean, we can always take the negative and turn it into a positive. With the recent Washington shooting, though, That was very, very strange. I mean, they started chasing this woman. She ran into one of the gates, and then they got out and they executed her, basically. I mean, it's just, and the reports are saying that she wasn't even armed. So it makes you wonder.
Did we also hear that they found that she was being medicated through psychotropics, and that was the same scenario with the naval shooter? Is that correct, or did I?
Yeah, and the naval shooter, 6 weeks before he did the shooting, allegedly, he reported being harassed electronically by some people with a device, the existence of which was released as a theoretical within days of the shooting. And now, if you know anything about how long it takes the public to hear about new inventions of the Navy or anyone else, anything they tell us they have has been in use for years before they tell us they have it. Like your microwave, same deal.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. He was reporting hearing voices coming from the microwave, and he had to change rooms at a hotel that he was staying at because the voices were coming from the microwave. So, yeah, there's no doubt that they're using these mind control patsies.
Yes, and they have publicly released data, and I saw this all over the non-conspiracy side of Reddit. And if it's making the non-awake news, it exists. When they're saying, oh yeah, we have theoretical devices that can do this, do exactly what the guy was claiming. Well, guess what? It's not a theoretical device. They're actively using it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's one of the arguments a lot of people make. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who was a little stuck in the matrix, and I brought up the point, we were talking about chemtrails, and I said, well, their patents say that this is to block out radiation from the sun. They contain barium and aluminum, et cetera, et cetera. And he says, yeah, but people file patents all the time, and it doesn't necessarily mean that these technologies are being used. Well, not necessarily, but a lot of the time, even though... It is being used. It is being used,
yeah. There's a company in Calgary that does it openly, that, says, hey, we're geoengineers. We engineer by spraying things from a high altitude. If you could go and look at a public place and find the information that it's happening... Of course, they don't say, yeah, we're spraying poison to kill you. They're saying we're doing it to help modify the environment and mitigate global warming. It's happening. It's not wingnut conspiracy theory. It is real. It is confessed.
But
chemtrails exist.
What do you think about the idea that they are using it to combat global warming? And global warming, I mean, I'm not referring to global warming in the sense that our emissions is causing the Earth to change, or aerosol cans or any of that. I mean global warming in the solar perspective, because the whole solar system is warming up. It's warming up and cooling down. So there is definitely a higher amount of solar activity, more solar radiation hitting us right now, and the best thing to stop that would be barium and aluminum. Could it be a situation to where they're utilizing these technologies for the... And I use the term very loosely, but for the greater good, even though they don't really have anything good in mind.
That's what they're claiming.
Right,
but
exactly.
But ultimately, the science behind it is, it's only a temporary solution. The notion is to mitigate the solar rays by changing the albedo. At least that's the public, the public explanation for public consumption. The albedo effect is basically how much light gets reflected back and how much ends up being absorbed into a particular surface.
Right.
In this case, our atmosphere. The problem with that is the particles themselves they'll have an albedo effect for about 20 years, after which point they actually end up having an insulating and concentrating effect. So ultimately, they will delay global warming by a couple of decades and then speed it up. So it's ultimately useless. It is a massive expense and a massive undertaking that causes hideous harm to plants, animals, crops, humans, water, fish, everything, and does nothing. Ultimately, achieves absolutely nothing. Unless, of course, your ultimate goal is to kill off a whole bunch of people, in which case, well, it's probably achieving its goals. or at least that's what they intend. We don't intend to let it go on. For one thing, open season on chemtrailers. Yep, there's a place where you can apply for your drone hunting permit.
Oh, that's right down the street from here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
I think one thing people got to also realize that, it's very easy to get your eyes taken off the prize. And if you've been awake for, I'd say if you've been awake since 2007, 2008, there was some big shifts that happened in that time period, just like in, I think, 99 Tanaath and in 94, 95, there was some big shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that about right? So I think that, people can tend to get their eyes taken off the prize, and they forget that it will, as the old saying, this too shall pass, that it will end, it will stop. And, it's important for people to be aware of them. It's, I look at chemtrails as a way to awaken people, because when you explain to them what's happening, and though it's very difficult because you can't really tell them why they're doing it, but you just let them know it's not natural. And then what happens eventually is they look up at the sky on a Tuesday morning, and it's a blue sky, and you see this funnel, this line going across the sky, and it's undeniable. So you make them aware, they look at it. But ultimately, we can't.
When you see a giant pentagram over your house, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. But we can't stop it per se as as an individual. What we can do is make people aware. But the bigger thing is, it will end. And just like a lot of the other programs, they will end. And what I'd like to see, especially the people who are awake and maybe on an advanced level, I'd like to see them try to help more people that are of the light and try to keep them focused on the plan and what's really happening. Because, I saw it a lot this summer, not to go off track, but I saw it a lot this summer. We had, and Christopher and I had talked about it, and you had all of a sudden all these whistleblowers coming out with these new revelations, and this planetary object was coming in, and this was going to happen, and that was going to happen. And I saw a lot of people getting caught up into the fear paradigm. And I really had to, talk to people and say, look, you're getting drawn into this reality where you're helping to manifest something that is not meant to be and is not going to happen, and you're creating it by thinking about it.
I tell my mother all the time, because she says, they're going to do this. This will happen. And I say, no. Don't say this will or they're going to. When you use that language, you are putting energy into that intention. Don't do it. Plain and simple.
I agree, and I disagree to a certain extent. I mean, we can be totally connected to any of this, and things still happen.
No, what I would suggest, though, Chris, is instead of saying this will happen or this is what they will do, say this is what they intend. This is what they are attempting.
Ah, okay.
Not necessarily what they're doing. It may sound like sophistry, but it is important.
Fair enough. Now let me ask you this, Tanaath. You're in contact with beings that are off-world, and one of the things that the cabal has kind of implanted into a lot of people's minds is overpopulation. Now, I do have to admit, though, that we've had a population growth that is astounding. From 1 billion to 7 billion people in a matter of 100 years. So naturally, we have to sustain this 7 billion, going on 8 billion people right now, with the same amount of resources that we've always had. Now, given we can produce them a little bit faster because we have better agricultural technologies, we have better energy technologies than we did 100 years ago, but still, it makes me wonder if there is a need for genetically modified organisms, if there is a need for all this crap, for lack of a better term, that they're pumping out, because there's just too many people on the earth. Now, I don't think that anybody has a right to go around and kill anybody, But could it all be just a matter of necessity, that there's just too many of us to sustain? Now, I've heard the flip side of the argument, and they say, well, you can take all the people in the world and you can line them up in Maine, and they would only fill up the state of Maine. Yes, that is very true. However, we need land to farm, we need water to drink, we need fuel to burn, resources and things like that to take care of all of these 7 billion people that are on the planet. And unfortunately, a lot of people are suffering right now because of a lack of resources, or at least mismanaged resources, because I do believe that we have enough to take care of every man, woman, and child on planet Earth, but it's just the population keeps on growing and growing and growing. What do the off-world beings that you're in contact with, Tanaath, have to say about the theory, and I'm going to call it a theory, of overpopulation? Because everything that I've said, I don't necessarily believe that. That's just some of the views that I've heard, and so I'm offering the flip side of the coin to get your take.
Well, I got Hank with me right here. He spirit projects down to me. He's part of my protection team, so he's pretty much here 24/7. And Hank, if you're familiar with the information from Forrest Crawford, he once related a tale of a man who went by the name of Oscar, who had an interaction in one of these, DUMBs, deep underground military bases, allegedly Area 51, in which there was a Tausetian extraterrestrial whom he called Hank. Now, that's not his real name. I don't have permission to release his real name over the airwaves. But Hank died, and he's been retrieved, and he's back on the job. And one of his jobs is to basically be a protector for me. So if you want the ET, or at least the Tausetian take on overpopulation, he's right here and he's able to talk.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
And unfortunately he can't make sound waves for the radio, but he can tell me and I can pass it along. Now this is different from channeling. It's telepathy, which means we actually hold a conversation using telepathic means. He's not in my body. He's not in my brain. He's not taking control of me. He's just basically talking at me like you would from across the room, or like we are right now using airwaves, only using something other than airwaves. He says hello. And he says that in general, most positive planets have populations of under 500 million. So from the Galactic Federation of Planets point of view, the situation of Earth is highly aberrant. He says that in most cases, populations will self-control. He says usually people will either leave voluntarily on spacecraft to explore, or they'll stop having as many children. He says on planets with population issues, many people just decide having a child is not for me, and in a couple of generations the problem takes care of itself. Or many people just sort of spontaneously develop wanderlust. Now, I think there's enough, and this is me talking right here, I think there's enough people on this planet who definitely have a case of get me off of here, and I want to go see the stars, to show that the wanderlust is alive and well.
I do agree with that, and I'm one of those that falls into the category of not wanting to have children, just because not having children is, for me, children just don't fit into my path right now. Now, I do have a couple of children in my life though, and I love them to death, and they're fantastic beings.
The same for me, children are kind of like wolves or elephants. It's great to have them around, but I don't need any in my house.
Exactly. So,
and Hank further says that, they absolutely do not agree with any form of involuntary or violent method of population control. That only that which occurs by free-willed choice is considered valid by them. And he also says that from our knowledge, what we know is that this is an artificial situation. For one, it was socially engineered by the deliberate manipulation of religion and denial of birth control and proper sex education to large portions of the population.
I agree.
It was also more esoterically a matter of the soul traps, which were intensified. I know I've talked in other, I can't remember if I've spoken to you about these before, and this is, again, it's me speaking again. But I know I have discussed this in other venues. The soul traps were one of these things that was keeping people reincarnating on this planet. And there was an intensification of these starting in the last couple hundred years. Now, when you have a trapped soul, it undergoes conditioning for what we experience as time down on this earth. It's not an instant process. The conditioning that goes on in a soul trap can take decades, with some beings even 100 years. So we had, generations of human beings that were being kept in these soul traps and shunted back onto this planet. These have been removed, but for some strange reason, there's still a massive quantity of beings who are attempting to get born on this planet. Hank just said, I don't know why. Because as anybody who lives here can tell you, the conditions are pretty cruddy. Even the people who have it really, really good, not including the elite, still have it bad in comparison to pretty much any advanced civilization.
I can definitely see that, because if the whole universe operates the way planet Earth operates, then I don't think the universe has much of a future, and I don't think it would have achieved what it has achieved in the more advanced races and species and world planets, because the universe can't operate the way Earth does. I mean, this is completely backwards from any kind of universal law or natural law.
Hank agrees with you. In fact, he adds, what's going on Earth here is insane. And he says, that's not your fault. It's not Earth's fault. It's not your fault. It's a matter of generations of manipulation and careful social and engineering and esoteric manipulation to produce a situation like this. He says, in essence, the population overgrowth, which the cabal hates so much, is a result of their own actions. A direct result of their own actions. They caused it. They made it. Which brings to mind the question, he says, of what is ultimately the intended purpose of sacrificing 95% of the people of a planet. He says, because that's what it amounts to.
I can give you an answer on that.
I'm trying to get the phrasing he's using because it's not quite translating into English very well. If you cause such an overgrowth only to kill it, there is a reason for that.
It could very well be, but I think
sacrifice.
I think
it's likely not a good reason.
Right. I think what's going on though, and this is just from what I can tell, is that if the 95% extinction protocol is actually true, which I am led to believe that it is, but the reason they would want to do that is because the slaves are starting to wake up and they're starting to rebel, and the power structure is being threatened, so they have no other choice but to burn the whole thing down and start over. And it's funny because now we have all of our history kept on digital. I was just talking to this with Brooks Agnew the other day, and so he's got his book, right? And his book maybe has 10,000 hard copies, but there has been hundreds of thousands of people that have read it in digital form. And that's where most of our information is, in digital form. So we get an EMP or some kind of event that takes out our satellites. All of a sudden, we have all of our info on the internet, on servers, on electronic means. I mean, we've got pictures, we've got everything all digitized. And then all of a sudden, if that's all of a sudden gone, then whatever population is left over after some kind of event, they can tailor history exactly the way that they want, and exclude certain things, add certain things, and tailor the future based on being able to control the past.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but keep in mind one thing, that okay? And this goes back to my, the information that I've, acquired through on the financial side, but it's really all interconnected. It all bleeds into the same paradigm, is that whether whichever faction you're a part of, that a disorderly collapse does not benefit anyone. And if you're just looking at it from the light versus the dark, if the dark ones, if we were to be struck with an EMP attack, sure, in your scenario, you're talking about...
It would harm them just as much as it would harm us, because they would not have access to any of their higher tech.
Not necessarily, because
it would come down to bows and guns, and guess what? The population has a lot more than they do.
On the surface, but underground.
So when they say they're going to shut when they say they're going to shut the internet down, you got to really understand that if you shut the internet down, if you take control, if you shut the power down,
they shut down their financial system then. And then
their puppets on the mainstream media they can't program you.
Yeah. The financial system is the grease that lubricates the cabal. Without it, they can't run either. They need the internet for that just as much as we need the internet for the freedom movement. So it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a catch-22. The internet is one thing that they can't shut down. So instead, they take measures like trying to use Verizon to shut down what kinds of information are able to be transferred on the internet.
See, I would have to disagree with that, because on the surface, right, it would be bows and arrows and people rubbing two sticks together to make fire. But that's why they've spent the last 30 years building underground bunkers. So
they're not going to be able to take over the world from an underground bunker.
No. The point is to hide out there until the surface dies out, and then they reemerge with their small population and
That's an awful, cynical view about the capacities of humanity, which I can definitely expect from the cabal. Because they really don't understand that humanity, when left to its own devices, is very, very powerful. We're not going to and bog.
The movie. Sorry, I'm getting an echo. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Go ahead, AG.
No, sorry. I couldn't hear Tanaath, and then I would speak. I would hear Tanaath, so I was getting an echo on my cell phone. Do you want to finish, Tanaath?
Sure. Despite all of the disaster movies, despite all of the media portrayals that show, complete devolution of civilization in a crisis, despite what the cabal would like to believe about humanity and like to try to engineer into humanity, we don't actually act like that. In a crisis, we actually bond together and we help one another. And things turn out a lot better than expected. At least if there's any sense of community or connection at all. And there still is.
Oh, that is very true. I was in Boulder doing work down there and helping people get out of the floods. And I saw the community coming together. So I totally agree with you on that. The human spirit.
We saw it here in Alberta, the same thing. Weeks and months after the fact, that all the moaning and complaining comes out. But during the crisis, people stuck together. They helped each other. There was a massive outpouring of support.
Right.
It wasn't complete chaos and looting and riots and murder in the streets. It was very orderly and community oriented, and people were helping each other and extending their arms to total strangers. This notion that it takes 3 days for us to all turn into cannibals is completely cynical and incorrect.
It is, but to a point, though, because we are dealing with a dumbed-down population that has been a victim of fluoridated water, vaccinations, poisons in the food, and their brain capability, their brain power, isn't really up to speed with where it should. Their empathy is very, very lacking as well. Their ability to feel what other people are feeling or put other people first. They've crafted this plan so perfectly that you have to almost applaud their evil genius and how they've taken every single measure. And then, I mean, just take a look at Black Friday as well, where people are killing each other over plastic crap. And just, when the food and water goes, well, that's going to be a whole nother deal. Now, in small communities...
No, I think there would be pockets where that will be the case, but I also think that the general trend is that things would be better than what people expected. We are capable of miracles. We human beings are amazing. And I think that it also helps to be optimistic and be hopeful. Now, we're still talking about, as if this is even a possibility. And let me state, if we have any say in the matter, it's not.
Right. I do agree with that. Most of us will rise up above it, and maybe some kind of order will start to come together just based on a communal mentality towards people that act anti-community when these small communities, if these small communities ever form in the event of a post-apocalyptic type event.
And I once worked for a civil structural engineer. And let me tell you, even if we completely lost all of our computers in a minute, as long as we got a couple of engineers alive, we're going to have concrete, we're going to have a sewage system, we're going to have running water, we'll have electricity. You'd have to basically simultaneously kill every engineer and tradesperson in the world at the same moment to achieve that kind of decimation of the human knowledge base. It's not all digital. There are people with skills and knowledge, and hey, we've still got texts kicking around from the 50s. Any civil engineer could tell you how to mix Portland cement in your own backyard. You got that. You got the start of an actual infrastructure. There's no reason for it to turn into Ugg and Gog hitting each other over sticks, making fire with sticks rubbing together and some flint, right? We have skills, we have a knowledge base, and it's not all digital. Yeah, it probably sucks for a couple of weeks, months, and or years, but infrastructure would actually recover pretty quickly. Like looking at from a civilization standpoint, we'd recover a lot more quickly to something like that than people realize. It would definitely suck, but we're not going to forget how to mix aggregate and cement just because the lights went out. We're not going to forget how to knit just because the lights went out. We're not going to forget how to do all those little skills and all those, how to till a garden and plant a seed just because the lights went out. Sure, you might not be able to look for a knitting pattern online, and sure, you might actually have to turn to your old engineering textbook from university, assuming you kept it, but that knowledge exists and it's still in a hard copy form.
Now, let me ask you this, based on some of the things that the off-world beings have said, what is the likelihood of something like this happening? Because I do see, AG brought this to my attention as a matter of fact, but I do see that there are forces that are stopping every one of the Cabal's plans, and they can't do anything or accomplish anything without major repercussions to them and more people awakening. So, I mean, is there an event like this that is scheduled, or at least that they're trying to push through? And do you think that eventually, after pushing
Hank's
it...
talking.
Okay.
And he's saying that the likelihood of them actually being able to bump this timeline into one where that occurs is very slim. He says, due to the nature of timelines, such an event is not currently on the timeline that the majority of human beings on this planet are on. However, they're always actively attempting to bump the timeline for everyone onto a more negative path. He says the overall trend over the last 2 years has been definitely positive, although there have been a few events that sort of acted like blips. He says right now, based on the current timeline, such an event would be attempted, but would fail spectacularly. He says the most you're going to see is lights out for 1 or 2 weeks, worst case scenario. And he says this is why Drake keeps emphasizing make sure you have enough to survive 2 weeks. He's like, you don't have to go all out building bunkers and stocking for 5 years, but make sure you have enough for your family and a couple extra for 2 weeks, and people will be okay.
That is very interesting, because the biggest concern right now is the satellites being knocked out, either by solar flare or maybe even on purpose, but they're talking about it taking years and years to rebuild these transmitters and get the grid back up.
Oh, sorry, he's talking at me. He says, pardon the language, he says, it's a bullshit proposition because they can launch a satellite from Ascension Island pretty much nonstop and have been. He says there's a couple thousand unreported satellites scooting around Earth that have been launched by them. So the infrastructure's in place. He says some of it would be quite easy to reroute.
That is pretty interesting. I never thought about that, about the reserve satellites that we would have in an event like that. But it's not necessarily just the satellites.
Oh, it's theirs, but there's nothing stopping us from repurposing it if they try to shut down the consumer ones. These guys have it. Our people have a sense of humor.
AG, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I think that the movie The Road, although it's an interesting drama and it's quite sensational, I think that reality, if you remember in the movie The Road, there was an Armageddon type event, and all the life on the surface had died, and most of the population was gone, and you had people trying to survive, and people eating each other and killing each other, no power. Those types of scenarios, although we see them in the movies, and that's where we get a lot of the programming from.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to do. And actually, Hank just said, I prefer the chrysalids. And I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It was actually a book. I don't know if they made a movie out of that.
What was it?
The chrysalids. Author was John Wyndham or something like that. Also wrote Day of the Triffids. But in the chrysalids, basically, you figure out as you're reading it that it is a post-nuclear, like it looks like a pioneer tech sort of situation or society, only it unfolds later on, or it becomes obvious throughout the book that it is a post-nuclear war society. And what happens in it is, you've got all these people who are basically acting out their little post-apocalyptic dramas, and then you have these people who transcend it. They leave it behind. They're the chrysalids, like butterflies. They become the next step of human evolution. Hank says they become higher dimensional, but it's not discussed in those terms. He says, all of these apocalyptic scenarios assume that humanity is static. He says he can guarantee that in a situation like that, you would see, presuming that there was no global ascension, you would see personal ascension on a much more rapid level. Because that level
and then the other angle,
brings out...
And then the other... Sorry, I'm getting the echo again.
No problem. I think there might be a little delay in the line, so just a heads up. But go ahead, AG.
Is it good now?
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So, no, the other angle is if the power elite were to, pull a rabbit out of their hiney, which they won't, but let's just say they did, that the choice of everybody knowing, believing, or having proof that humanity's alone in the universe would meet that whole scenario would end, and there would be a major presence of helpers. So that type of event would trigger the exact event they don't want to happen in the first place. So
we're speaking with Tanaath of Silver Legion and AG, personal friend of mine and Tanaath's as well. And of course, I'm playing the resident cynic, as I always do. But I think that's the way to get to the bottom of all situations. So, guys, is there anywhere you would like to take the broadcast from here? AG, anywhere you want to
go? Yeah, I did want to bring up. I know a lot of people have had questions in relation to what's going on in the financial system and the global markets, and with the impasses. I'm rolling my eyes and saying it. The impasses in D.C. with the machine trying to act like they're relevant. And how those, So how those things are going to play into our financial system and our economy and our currency. So what I've gathered this week from a couple sources, one that is outside of the day-to-day operations of the financial system, but has been really at the forefront for many decades, helping to usher in the new system, and then a contact actually within the global markets, and is really working behind the scenes on a day-to-day basis, and it really sort of it really coincides, and it's quite analogous. The information I've gathered is the dates of October 17th. In terms of the United States corporation reaching its debt limit is irrelevant. That the real date is the 24th of October. And on the 24th is the actual date. Now, this is the actual date that the big banks, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, that the big banks are well aware of is really the last day that the U.S. can pay its bills. Now, I think about a week ago, it was reported that they had about $50 billion left in Treasury to pay for obligations. And as you know, with their commitments to the United States people and the country and really everyone else in the world, that money goes pretty quick. I'm told that on the 24th that if there is not capital, they will default on their obligations. Now, they're saying, and this is really within the sources I have within the matrix, that the odds are very low that such a scenario would happen where the U.S. would not just default on the dollar, but default in terms of its other obligations. The information I gathered from one of my other contacts was that at the moment, right now, behind the scenes, the usual suspects, the Federal Reserve and the Bank of Japan, are doing what they do, which is creating massive amounts of electronic currency and manipulating the markets. So the information I have is, although you're going to hear a lot of headlines about potential defaults and people aren't going to get their welfare checks and WIC's not going to work and the parks are going to be closed, that the new system, although we are getting close, it's probably not going to happen, this month.
Okay. There seems to be an October 1st deadline, and a lot of people were looking to October 1st as the absolute deadline. But the deadline that the government was putting out was deadline to get troops ready, deadlines to get storable food and things like that. But I just don't. I'd never believed, even when I heard this, that October 1st was going to be the end date, that whatever they were planning for was going to go into effect, because obviously they would leave a few weeks leeway if they did know of a coming event or something. And you named that October 24th date, so that's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, the October 24th date is the actual date that the government will run out of money. They're not talking about that on the news. And this actually came from somebody who's, that's managing, quite amount of, many billions of dollars worth of funds globally. So, but that being said, yeah, go ahead.
I got a question. Now,
True.
Is it conceivable that, the U.S. government running out of money is inconvenient and or frightening that it can be for certain, for people who rely on the government for paychecks? But is it not conceivable that this could be a prime opportunity for some actual positive action?
Yes, I do. I think I think we've had many of those windows. I don't think this is the last window. I think the last great window was...
No, I don't think it's the last. I'm just thinking it's a window. It's a window of opportunity.
No, I'm saying we had another window in August of 2011 when the markets collapsed 20% because they were coming close to a default, and I definitely think there were efforts to bring in the new. And I do think this is a wonderful opportunity. And not to be cynical, because I stay focused on the right frequency. But my only concern with, and I don't want to manifest the wrong reality, but my only concern with it being the right time is I'm not sure, and I can't confirm this with my own eyes or my own contacts, but I'm not sure if the logistics are in place. If in the event the bad guys are if the lights go out for them, that they are contained in terms of the old saying, if I'm going down, I'm taking everyone with me. Because they still have some of those plans, and not all of them. I know there's been some reports on the internet and some people who are claiming to work with various groups, and I'm not going to mention names, that's saying that most of the booby traps or most of the events that would attack vital U.S. infrastructure or global infrastructure will be those things will be activated in the event that the cabal is being arrested or detained or isolated or contained. I'm not sure if that's the case, and I know that there'll come a point where most of their little toys and most of their bombs and most of their kill switches won't work. I'm not sure if we're at a point right now where they are fully accounted for. So my feeling is, although this is a wonderful opportunity, and again, I don't have access to all of this information, but my feeling is we're very close, and every day we're getting closer, and and sometimes every hour we're getting closer. But my feeling is it might not happen. It might not happen this month, but again, I don't want to focus on the wrong idea because I'd love for it to happen tomorrow.
So would I, but honestly, I'm not going to hold my breath till tomorrow.
Clearly, I think it's obvious even to the ones who have been asleep, who are beginning to awake. It's clear that there is major infighting, which is beautiful because the beast will consume itself. They have a lot of problems within their ranks right now. I mean, I look at the Affordable Health Care Act that the Democrats passed, which really it's really a security.
Can I make an aside note here? Thank you for not calling it Obamacare. If it should be called anything after any name, it should be McCain Care, considering that it was his idea. Passed into law by the Democrats and started by the Republicans. Really, we should call them the Republicans and the Democrats.
Well, I've been looking into Obamacare, and from what I can tell, people are paying way more than they were originally paying, and this isn't a free or universal health care. It's a universal health care in the sense that everybody's required to have it, but it's not free by any means.
Insurance, and insurance is not care. This is what, everybody talks about, or everybody should have health insurance. No, if you're really going to talk in terms of human rights and things that people need, it is the actual care itself, not who pays for it, that is at issue. And this Affordable Care Act does not address in any way, shape, or form the actual provision of health care. It's all about who's going to pay for insurance. Insurance does not care. Insurance exists for the sole purpose of making the cabal money. Nothing else.
The Affordable Health Care Act, if you really want to call a spade, it's really being securitized in the open markets. And what this law is intended to do is to recapitalize the cabal. One of my insurance industry sources had told me a number of months ago that, and other people have reported it too, that and we know the unions are very powerful in the United States, is that the same unions that initially liked the concept, of course they didn't get to read it, but they just took their word for it, are realizing that it's a disaster. And the administration has been getting a lot of heat from the unions. And if you look at the act itself, one, it can't be funded, and two, what it does is it brings a lot of people who are struggling just to keep their engines moving. And what it does is it takes them from a position of scarcity to poverty, because now people aren't going to be able to, they're not going to be able to make their car payment, or not going to be able to pay their rent, or their quality of life is going to be dramatically damaged, and or they're not going to be able to even pay for it, and then they deal with the fine, and they'll have to pay a fine to the government.
You hit the nail on the head when you said that it's a campaign to refund to fund the cabal. That's all it is. That's all any insurance is. Insurance makes a face. Yeah, it makes a face attempt to convince you that it's there for your benefit. But if you've ever actually tried to collect on an insurance claim, you know it's not there for your benefit. It's there to take money from you and turn it into money for the cabal.
That's right.
Which is why it's required in so many instances.
Exactly. So you have a situation where, and again, this is just my observation. This is not coming from any people I've spoken to. Is you look at both parties, which, by the way, both. I love when they get up. I don't watch TV, but I see clips on the internet, and I don't watch them on TV. And I love when you watch them and they act like one party hates it and one party doesn't hate it. They both want it because it both keeps them in power, but they have to maintain the idea that there's actually. Oh, it's so obvious. I actually just I want to jump through the TV. It's
a Punch and Judy show. There are a bunch of puppets, and there's a hand up all those butts, and that hand belongs to the same body.
Here's my prediction. I do think that the plan itself will eat itself like the beast will, but I also think that the implementation has a great chance, like Syria, and like other events, to do what? To awaken the masses. Because Joe Smith and Sally Jones, who have been paying no attention to this, who don't understand anything of really what's going on besides the mainstream narrative, are now going to start to question why they're being forced to buy a private product through a government structure. And I think that the program itself, although initially could be, put it this way, it will set the country back into a deep recession. And you're going to see companies that are going to start to, they say that companies are going to try to bring employees under the 30 or 32 hour limit. But I actually think that you're going to start to see the layoffs. And those layoffs, those people are going to start to question what's going on. And then the people who manage to keep their jobs, manage to keep employment, those people are also going to begin to question why they're being forced to buy a private product. And I think that what they're debating right now is this thing going to, could this implode our scam on the people. And I'd have to say that they're not sleeping well right now. What do you think, Chris?
Oh, keep going, please.
No, I mean, I just wanted to get your thoughts. What do you think, Tanaath? You think right now they're sleeping well? I don't think they're sleeping well.
I think some of them are, because they're thinking that they still have a chance to win this, but I think some of them aren't, because they realize that it's out of control. That they got on a wild horse after whipping it into a frenzy, and now they're realizing that they're not staying on the horse. After all, you know what they said. No plan survives the first engagement with the enemy. Well, they consider all of humanity the enemy. All their careful plans don't mean much.
And the other thing, too, that you have people that are recognized as well is a lot of it, well, I don't know the numbers, but a lot of the politicians in power in D.C. Are controlled by Rome. They are just employees of Rome. And they don't, it's like once you make a deal with the devil, there's no turning back. So even if they want to turn back, even if they want to try to save face, they're gonna push, and they're gonna push, and they're gonna push, and they're gonna push. And I see a scenario where everything will come together, and you'll have a scenario where the system will crack to a point where they can no longer maintain the integrity of it. I'm not sure if that they lose control of the financial system, if they lose control, because they do rely on the welfare system. The welfare system, and I'm not just talking people on welfare, but the people who are on state benefits. And some people, they need it, and it's a necessity. There are some people that are on the system and they're getting free health care and free food. But, there are people that, are relying on that system, and they rely on those people for what? For votes. If you lose those people, so if their system breaks, and those people who have been relying on those checks from the state, and getting their rent covered,
not only are they going to stop voting,
covered,
but they're going to grab the pitchforks and the torches.
You got it.
They
so
also
the
rely
bigger question
on
is
people on welfare for one more thing, and that is to parade them around as some sort of public, visible public sign of corruption, or why they shouldn't have all these things, so that they can start cutting people even more. When you hear about welfare recipients, you don't hear about the people who need what they're getting. You hear about welfare the same you hear about drugs, always in terms of its abuse.
Right. That's right. You hear about the people who are, defrauding the Medicare system, people who are, working and getting a welfare check, but you're not hearing about the 98% that if they didn't get that welfare check, they'd be out on the streets, or their kids would need, or they wouldn't have, medicine to function, which is a whole other story. But the bigger thing in all of this is, and I try to remind people of this because it's, although people that are awake talk a really good game, you tend to get distracted really easily, because you're bringing in so much information and you're processing so much information, the mind doesn't stop. But I think people got to realize too is that the Rome is collapsing. The entire structure is collapsing, but it's not a collapse like 1929. It's not a building coming down, like 9/11, God forbid. It's a slow moving train crash.
Oh, definitely.
That's what's happening. it's a big train that's packed with cars, and it's headed for the mountain straight on. It's going to crash. It's just going slow. And there's no stopping it. So what we're seeing now in real time is the next portion of the tracks. It's moving along. And now we're seeing, it's happening in D.C. And there's going to be other events that's going to follow. It's not going to stop. Like I tell people, we're not going back to the status quo. We're not going back to the way it was. There's going to be no recovery. We are coming to the end game of the current system, which doesn't serve humanity, doesn't serve terror, doesn't serve the planet, and doesn't serve the new incoming consciousness. There's no going back. So it's important that, you pay attention to these individual chapters within the drama, within the movie, but you don't get too caught up in it, because ultimately the train is going to crash, and it's going to be in the end it will be spectacular, but it's not going to be a situation where it happens in one day.
Right.
No.
Let's go to the call board. I didn't think a few people wanted to call in. 866-37-TRUTH if you want to call in. 866-37-TRUTH. And we have Carol holding for us. And Carol, how are you doing? Area code 201?
I'm just listening.
Oh, you're just listening. Okay. We actually have a listen live number, but feel free to keep listening on the board there. But we actually have a listen live number, which is 832-225-5308. I think it's on the front page of truthfrequencyradio.com. Anyways, AG, please go ahead.
No, I think I pretty much kind of sum it up there. I think I'd love to get Tanaath's. I think Tanaath is far more qualified to answer this than I am. I'd love to get Tanaath's viewpoints, whether it's opinion or opinion supported by knowledge and fact. I'd love to get her thoughts on. You have all these different groups that are here trying to help. I was under the impression about a year ago, maybe a little bit less, that through my contacts in the clouds, that there was a lot of miscommunication, and there were a lot of challenges because of the lack of continuity. So almost like everyone was on their own plan.
Yeah.
From what you're seeing, are you seeing a greater? Are you seeing more synergy, or is it still kind of?
I'm seeing invisible synergy. If that makes sense, I'm seeing invisible synergy. On the surface, it looks like a quagmire. On the surface, it looks like nothing more than confusion and breakdown and miscommunication and chaos. But all of these combined energies are working together to produce something. And it's working. I've been trained in how to use the looking glass. I'm not talking about the tech. I'm talking about the bare brain technique, the true looking glass. And I've taken a look, and there has been improvements. Hank's not lying when he says that the trend in the last 2 years has been for more and more positive shifts in the timeline. We're on a very positive timeline right now, one of the most positives. That is the sum result of all of the effort. I don't think any one group can take responsibility for it. It only happens in aggregate. And, the fact that there's all this strife and miscommunication and people going off on each other, and it's happened with my group too. It doesn't stop the whole from being effective as a whole. When we came down to do this work, those of us who came here deliberately to do this work, we came knowing that we'd lose our memories. We came knowing that we'd basically have an egg beater taken to our brains. We came knowing that we'd forget. We came knowing that we'd be confused. We came knowing that there'd be F-thoughts and all kinds of problems.
And AG, take us away, please.
Oh, there he is.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people have. I'm seeing a lot of noise on the internet and social media about Comet Ison. I know the reports that Tanaath had provided people over the past couple of weeks that, and I think I forget the guy's name, but he's a pretty active astronomer and he posts a lot of his work up on YouTube. He's really good at what he does, and he was able to show through the various lenses that the imagery of the comet, they were being doctored by NASA, which I'm shocked because I can't believe they would do something like that. So he was able to break through all the different images, and he was able to demonstrate that actually the comet itself, it looked like it appeared to be three objects, but it was not a comet. And I think that, Tanaath, you had mentioned in a prior segment a couple of weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, that the information had come back that the objects were incoming from Orion. They were running at sub-light level speeds, and they were slowing down. Do you have an update on those objects, and if there's any information you can provide the listeners and other people? Because I think a lot of people are still, I know there's some other information out there that says that the comet is actually some friendly object, and it's part of our transition, and that sounds great. But I think looking at
Hank
the past
has
history
comments,
with,
actually.
Go ahead. Love to hear.
Hank
love
has
to hear
some
Hank.
comments, actually, and he says, it is a hostile ship escorted by 2 other hostile ships. But this does not mean that it will still be a hostile ship when it reaches the system, or that it will be a problem. It won't be a problem. And he says it's probably less information than people want to hear, but at this time it's all that we're comfortable discussing. Simply put, Ison is not a natural comet. It is not sent with benevolent intentions, but that does not mean it will be a problem. It will not be a problem, he reiterates.
And if anyone questions that, or questions that there's a Hank there, which there is, but if anyone questions that, if they do some research on YouTube, and Chris and I had looked at this a couple years ago, that there's actually a video. It was taken by one of the satellites, but it actually shows Elenin. Remember the old comet Elenin that was supposed to fly by?
He just cracked up laughing when you mentioned Elenin.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a video that shows Elenin being hit by something really strong, and it shows the actual object, whatever Elenin was, being redirected. So if anyone has any doubt that if such an event can take place, go look for the video. Chris, do you remember that video?
I do. Yeah. But explain it for the audience, please.
Well, basically, you had all these different people like Hoagland, Richard Hoagland, and he was talking about how Elenin was this, something great that was going to be great for humanity.
It was a time capsule sent to us from the future.
Right, it was a time capsule sent to us from Atlantis, and they were bringing donuts. It was something great. I was excited. Right. I was really excited. But,
are they gluten free?
Yeah, they're bringing donuts and coffee. But so I guess from some whistleblowers that posted stuff was that Elenin was a hostile, and I don't know if it was 2 objects, but Elenin was first I was told the information was out there if you're looking for it, that it was shot at, but then the video came out and you saw it was undeniable, and then we never heard another thing about Elenin again. But it definitely it was definitely a space. I don't know what the intent was with Elenin, but it appears that there was something behind it. But in any case, the video shows Elenin being hit by. It definitely wasn't an AK-47. It was hit by something really strong, and you see this massive object being redirected. You couldn't tell if it imploded, but you clearly saw that it was addressed. So if that's the same fate that the ISIN objects are going to suffer, I guess ISIN will be a non-story in the near future.
Oh, likely. And Hank just said, with a laugh, reptoid philosophy, when all else fails, throw rocks at it.
The other good thing, too, and again, I've learned through the years, through my many years of my awakening, I'm still awakening, I think we all are, that, and I learned a lot from you, Tanaath, and picking up your energy, and trusting people to use their own discernment and to to use their free will as choice, and people are free to follow whoever they want to follow, and some people have to go through a path that's maybe not a straight line, but there is some information out there right now where people are talking about how this object is something positive, and I think there's going to be something positive that's going to come out of that. Is those sources of information will no longer be credible once this object is addressed and it's no longer an issue. So it will serve the greater benefits to the light workers who might be a little bit confused on what this object is. If they're hearing conflicting reports that this object is something wonderful, when this object is no more, then those sources can be discredited, and you can start to really focus your intent on information that's going to benefit you versus eating up this information. And of course, I don't know what the agenda would be to, try to convince people that it's something positive. But, clearly
Hank says that's the part that mystifies us as well. Like, what's the point of telling people, oh, hey, it's good for you if it's not? Like, what would it manifest? Because if it's not good for us, it's not going to reach us. Quite frankly, we have ways of stopping that. So what purpose does it serve? It's absolutely mystifying.
I think a lot of people too are still.
Right now, we're not recommending anyone get on a spaceship with somebody they don't know. Don't take rides from strangers.
Yeah. I think there's still a lot of people too who are, they get caught up in the space drama, and they're still holding on to these, the incoming dwarfs and the incoming planets, and the only objects that, if people have been paying attention to Tanaath's work over the past, really over the past 18 months, but the past year, you can go to if you don't want to take Tanaath's word for it, you can go to YouTube, and you can see all the videos of these spherical objects out near the sun and around other places. There are objects out there.
Yeah, there's Hank said there's about 26 friendly large spherical objects in our solar system.
Right.
Right now. And when we say large spherical objects, we're talking the size of the moon and larger. He says, ladies and gentlemen, that is a mothership. A ship in your atmosphere is not a mothership. A ship in your atmosphere is an atmospheric ship, and those are small by our reckoning. Because most of our gravitics start to get a little flaky after about 370 meters or so.
I think if people realized how far Nibiru was from Solar System, they would stop talking about it. You still get people talking about this infamous Nibiru, which is making a pass through our solar system, bringing in debris and small planets. If people actually knew how far it was from us, they wouldn't talk about it anymore.
Not to mention, it's in a lot of pieces, Hank says. So debris is about all it can bring. And he says debris
Exactly.
is really not all that big a deal because most of it tends to be small enough to burn up in the atmosphere anyway. And anything that isn't gets redirected. He said, civilization in the stars would not be possible if we did not have some way of redirecting large rocks.
What about the one we just had last year, YU-55? That was another one.
Again, it didn't hit. You know.
What did you say?
It didn't hit. There's all this fear-mongering around flying rocks, but there have been some that have been on direct collision courses with the Earth in observable scientific recent history that didn't make it to their destination. That's not an accident.
Yeah, there's a lot in the the cabal. They're really good at taking information and using light workers to help it move viral. And there's actually a lot of people out there that what they do is they put out information about these different space rocks, and then what happens is these stories take on a life of their own. And then what happens is you have thousands, and then tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of light workers focusing their intent on this rock that's going to hit us. And what people don't realize is you're actually fueling that same event that they're trying to create. If people, and I don't buy into the notion that ignorance is bliss, because it isn't. But if people took the stance that, everything is ultimately falling into divine order, that we're not alone, and I don't mean we're not alone in the stars, meaning we're not alone in this war, and that we're getting a lot of help here on the ground. There's a colossal amount of evidence to back that up, and there's a colossal amount of imagery to prove that there are objects in our solar system, and then there's incarnates like you and us, and there's whistleblowers, and there's people who have direct knowledge that there is some form of help that's here that is foreign to a lot of our our day-to-day acumen. That there are things, there is a plan to keep things intact, and I think what people, if they can just begin to focus on the desired, it's like law of attraction. If you can just focus on that desire, what do they say, Tanaath, Chris? What the mind can achieve, what the mind can believe, it can't achieve. You have to focus on that intent, and I think if people started to move away from the fear porn and the drama,
goes, energy follows.
Right. They're still using people, but the thing is, it's far more effective to use a light worker. And I don't know the ratios. Maybe you do, not. But I'm of the understanding that someone of the light has a if you're able to manipulate someone of the light's energy field, if you're able to manipulate their thoughts, the effects of using them as sort of like a battery.
One awake person is far more effective than hundreds of thousands of sleeping ones. Now, the problem with that, if you got somebody who's awake but has not yet gained full conscious control of their own creational power, and you get them scared of something, well, it's a disaster, because they start trying to manifest that. They don't realize they're doing it, but that's what they're doing. And this is why we say over and over and over again, no fear. Your fear does not produce anything beneficial. To all these people who are sitting there slavering at the bit, chomping away, wanting to see revelations get started, or, trying to find proof that revelations is happening, don't. This does not benefit you in any way, shape, or form. The brief bit of joy you'll get from being able to say, I told you so, to somebody is not worth the suffering. It's not good for you. It's not good for anyone. Don't do it. Drop the fear. Drop the catastrophism. Be productive. And at the same time, I've got this one guy on my blog who is just frothing with anger at me, and I've got no idea why. But it makes me wonder, what exactly are you proving with this? Number one, I'm not going to post your comments. They're harassing. I'm not going to post that. Number two, what does this anger at me accomplish? Why are you even angry at me? Are you angry at me because I'm talking? Are you angry at me because, I'm experiencing a reality that is violently different from yours? What does this anger accomplish in lashing out at me? I'm not going to shut up just because you're angry. I'm still here. Think of what your power is achieving for you. What are you putting your power to work doing? Are you putting it to work for yourself and for others? Or are you putting it to work doing things that don't help you? Try to be productive. If you can't do anything else, at least try to figure out what can you do that contributes in a positive fashion.
The term "history repeats itself" is a mind virus, according to.
Oh, it is. It doesn't have to repeat itself. Hank just said, in fact, it doesn't. He says, history spirals. He says there are cycles that repeat, but the outcomes always change.
And the thing is, I think a lot of people too. I feel where they get their cynicism, where they become separated from the positive mindset is we're tired. People are tired, and
oh heck, I can definitely understand that. I'm exhausted. I've been living a double life for 16 years, and I've been doing this work actively for 2, and I am exhausted. But
what about you, Chris? I mean, look at Chris. I mean, Chris is going through, managing a lot of stuff right now. We're tired,
it's worth it,
and
so I'm going to keep trucking.
Of course it's worth it. And the party is going to be incredible. And it's going to be, I think people get so caught up in dates. And I tell people, we're not going to have to wait 100 years for the changes to reach its climax. We're getting close. And just be patient. And just sit back and just watch the movie play out,
Or heck, sit back and contribute in whatever way you can.
Exactly.
If you're really upset about the fact that it's taking too long, well, try to see if there's something you can do to speed it up a little. Be constructive.
Another thing you can do, and this is just something that I do personally, that I think a lot of people see benefit from is really focus on your own field and really focus on your own energy and saying, okay, how can I raise my level of consciousness? How can I raise my frequency? How can I begin to vibrate within a different energy spectrum? Because when you do that, you're going to affect people. You walk into a supermarket and you're going to just affect people just being in their space. But one of the things that you can do to gain that center and to begin to allow as much light as possible to enter your space is really focus on, how you're treating your vessel, what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're consuming, and, are you taking care of yourself? Are you exercising? Are you abusing drugs or alcohol? Do you have abusive relationships? Because those relationships drain energy, and that energy, it drains your emotional droplets, and it creates a distortion. Focus on getting your center. Focus on being healthy spiritually, mentally, physically. Because when you do that, the light shines on you like a crazy diamond, and that diamond reflects on everybody. And that just by focusing on your own vessel, on your own body, without even talking to people, changes people, but it changes yourself. And I think if more people can do that as we watch this process play out, we're going to speed the process up. I think we're still inclined to be a little lazy and, eat bad foods. And yeah, we're aware of, the things we're consuming and the things we're drinking, but we're still making mistakes. I think now, more importantly, now is the time more than ever. And it's not just to be, not to, to be thin or to be healthy or to take care of your heart. Now more than ever is taking care of your vessel is really taking care of everything.
Yeah, and I want to say to people, one of the dilemmas that occurs when people get into this and start to really learn is, on one hand, you have the inner urge to do something. On the other hand, you don't know what, because it seems so huge. Like, how can one person make a difference is the thought that goes through a lot of minds. Well, start with the small things. Start with yourself. Start with your relations with your friends and your family. Start with your vessel, as you said. And don't get so caught up on trying to solve the entire problem. Instead, follow your inner guidance and see where it takes you. If it says make a website, make a website. I almost talked myself out of making Silver Legion website. I was thinking, oh man, I can't do that. I'm going to get laughed off the internet. But then I finally said to myself, well, so what? So what if people laugh at me? People laugh at everybody all the time. It's not a big deal. It does not actually affect me. And I went ahead and did it. And yeah, it hasn't always been easy, but it's been worth it. And this is one thing that I can do to make a difference. And it's netted me some surprising synchronicity in putting my efforts together with other people who would not have been able to do that if I hadn't put myself out there. So whatever it occurs to you inside to do, go out and do it. Even if it's, I really think I'm going to plant a garden this year. Or, man, I really think I should go down to the youth center and give a few hours of my time. Or, hey, I think I'm going to cook dinner instead of buying it. Whatever it is that occurs to you, whether it's tiny or huge, do it. Don't hold yourself back. Don't let fear and doubt and worry hold yourself back. What's the worst that can happen? You change something. Don't let ridicule or the fear of ridicule hold you back either.
And change your situation. If you're, I think we've been conditioned to believe that, you've walked into a relationship, you've walked into a situation, a communion, and if you're unhappy, if it's unfixable, you can't change it. And the reality is you own every outcome. So if you own the problem, you own the solution. If you're unhappy, if you don't feel you're in the right place, whether it's work, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a love partner, change it. Don't sit there and continue to bask in the negativity of that relationship. Right. Make the change. I think what happens is, Tanaath and Chris, is people are so afraid to make the change because they're concerned about public opinion. They're concerned about how they're going to affect the other person. But it's not being selfish. If you don't take care, ultimately, if you don't take care, look, there's being selfish and being self-centered, and there's also taking care of yourself. And if you need to take care of yourself, no one's going to do it but you. If you have a problem, no one's going to fix it but you. If you're in a bad situation, no one's going to fix it but you. You need to be the change you've been waiting for. Go out and make the change. Do it tomorrow.
Exactly. Don't wait for a savior.
Very well said, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like we are at the